Did you hear, oh, we're live?
Yes. Did I hear? Yes, I did hear the news that you were about to share with me. But I am Pete. This is the Lasser Cast, where we review horror movies and streaming shows. And today, me and my good friend right over there, Dr. Zayas G.O.D., Danny Torkel, we're going to be reviewing the finale of True Detective Night Country. So, Danny, I think, do you want to ask me that question again?
Did you hear the news about True Detective right before that I just saw all over social media right before you sent me a link?
Like, dude, I clicked on our thread that we have and I saw the article right as I was about to send you the link to this recording. So, yeah. That's good news for us, right?
I think so. So for anybody who doesn't know what I'm referring to, it was just announced that True Detective Season 5 has been greenlit and that they are bringing back writer, director, creator Issa Lopez to do Season 5. So suck it, haters. Especially you, Nick Puzolato or Pizzaludo. But yeah, one of the big talking points, and something I'm sure we'll talk about in this review, has been the diversity of opinions for this season.
Yes.
And I think, as with a lot of times, it's a very loud minority, because what we've seen is that this show has the highest Rotten Tomato rating of any season of True Detective, Season 4, that is. It is easily the highest, the most watched season of True Detective on HBO Max. It brought in over 12.5 million viewers. Just an insane number of people tuned in for the finale.
Yeah.
So the people that have been loudly critical of it, some more, popular than others, they seem to be a very loud minority, because apparently most people loved this season, or at least really liked it. And HBO was like, hey, the ratings were good. People tuned in. Let's just do it again. And I already saw people fan casting their, two detectives for Season 5.
Yeah.
And in my favorite one, I don't know who tweeted this, but my favorite one is somebody posted a picture of Kirsten Dunst and Michelle Williams from the movie Dick. And I was like, that would be fucking hilarious if because it's what's especially funny is that those actresses who were popular when we were younger are actually kind of our age. So it'd be like, oh wow, they're letting women in their early 40s take over. And then I'm like, wait, we're in our early 40s. Fuck. So I feel like that would be good.
Yes.
I've also been spending a lot of this week deep diving into Callie Reese being a professional fucking boxer. How did I not know this? How did I not know this until the season ended? And I watched 4 of her fight compilations on YouTube. She's an accomplished championship boxer with a 19-7 professional record. So yeah, that kind of it forces me to reevaluate so many of the scenes that we watched where she just randomly walks up to much larger dudes and just punches them in the face. I'm like, of course she does. That was her job. Her job was to punch people in the face, and she did it very successfully. So now it makes even more sense that she would do that.
Well, it's funny because Nick Pizzolatto, he basically just started retweeting all these negative tweets about the show, right? He's the creator of True Detective. He wrote the first 3 seasons. And Callie Reese or whatever, Callie Reese, she responded finally, and she kind of just pointed out how It was kind of like immature or like just not cool that he was doing that, you know. And it's good.
It just there's nothing about that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like, you know that somehow Nick Pizzolatto is getting name recognition and probably monetary value.
I think he's one of the producers on the show.
Yeah, his name is in the credits.
Yeah.
So he's getting like residuals.
Sure.
In both notoriety, fame, and money.
Yeah.
So for him to sit at home and bash the series, and it's not even that, but it's the idea that he's bashing the series, which in turn gives credence to these friggin' trolls. You know, these like basement dwelling trolls who, anytime you look at like the real haters of anything on social media, you could always tell right away. Their like user handle has a bunch of random numbers. Their profile picture is usually a cartoon that doesn't have their own face.
Yeah.
There's never any picture of a significant other or children involved. These are no. I'll be, because it's the same way with any criticism.
Yeah.
It's very whether it's the Marvels, whether it is whether it's professional wrestling, whether it's Star Wars, whether True Detective, the MCU, you name it, whatever fandom it is.
Yeah.
The trolls have a very common profile type.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It definitely seems like they get angered when women are behind the scenes. That seems to actually upset them the most. Like Kathleen Kennedy is treated like the Antichrist because she runs Star Wars. Then
she's only been involved with Spielberg through like some of Spielberg's greatest hits, biggest blockbuster successes, Oscars. That's fine. But the second she's like promoted to head of Star Wars, it's like, well, you're ruining my childhood.
Uh-oh, look at this. Someone's joining the party here. Chris D'Onofrio. The show got renewed and Lopez is heading it up. The haters lost.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm glad that you're on board with this too, Chris. Thank you for joining us too, man. This show, it's funny because you and I think, have pretty much liked every episode. There was the 4th episode, which was pretty depressing. But now we're in, we've reached the finale. I want to know how you felt about the way everything was resolved. So we get Clark pretty early on in this episode. And Clark, they torture him right away. Talking about like, women in power and stuff like that. Boy, do these women mess up Clark. They torture him. I was actually kind of surprised with how they torture him. They take duct tape and wrap the earbuds around his head so he has to listen to Annie K screaming on a loop. I thought that was pretty fucked up. What'd you think?
I really like that. That's something unique.
Yeah.
Like here he is screaming and declaring his love for Annie, who we find out that he actually is the one that kills her, even though he didn't start the process of killing her. He does finish her off. And for him to like be forced to listen to like her final moments that's kind of brutal. But like, also he fucking deserved it. And like, one thing that we kind of both said in our episode 5 review was we were excited, but we were also nervous.
Yes.
And I think that this episode did a lot to quell the nerves and to stoke the excitement. I think it basically, I like that it didn't answer every question.
Yes.
But it answered the big questions.
Yes. Probably my favorite thing about this episode was that there wasn't a supernatural answer for anything. You could read into some of the things that happened and been like, oh, that's a supernatural thing. But in general, everything could be explained with a logical answer.
Yeah. But like, let's also not forget, with all the talking about Nick, Pizzolatto, season 1 features a basically like Lovecraftian like tunnel to outer space in the last scene, in like one of the last scenes of the show. So like, had they gone in that direction, I think that they kind of teased like this microbe that could have like DNA altering effects, and like, so they hinted at a lot of stuff. You know, the Thing references were overt in episode 1. They got even more overt in this this episode. I also just wanted, before we moved on to like the actual, so just going back to like the haters and this, we spent a lot of time. We spent a lot of time in one of our reviews kind of breaking down this Forbes review.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
And one of the things that like really struck me about that was like, like I said, I get it. Like, all jokes aside, this show is not for everybody. Season 1 is not for everybody. This is like a much darker. True Detective is just dark. Yeah. And that's not for everybody. And I get that. We're all entitled to our opinions. I'm already seeing reviews of Dune 2 that it's either the greatest movie ever made, or, oh my God, it looked great, but that took fucking forever. So it's like, I'm already starting to see like the variations of opinions on that. Sure. But the one thing that struck me about that review that we spent so long kind of breaking down was, he was like, the show takes place in like 30 days of night and there's no stars in the sky. And like, why can't we see Aurora Borealis? Yeah. And then during this episode, I like frantically messaged you. I was like, there are stars and Aurora Borealis. Fuck you, Forbes guy.
Yes. Revenge all around, man. The haters are paying the price.
It was just like it, because like, if that is your cheap, if that's like one of your cheap complaints, then like, what are you even doing? Yeah. And the fact that it ended the way it did made me very happy.
Yeah. Well, that's something that we can kind of unpack, because I like this episode. I like the way that everything was resolved. However, I think about like what they're trying to say with the show, and is there a sort of an agenda behind it? I want to get to that in a little bit, but right now I want to talk about the Tsalal guys. So we find out who killed Annie K. We find out who killed the Tsalal guys. And we also find out that Tsalal, they weren't as innocent as you'd think. In the last episode, they talked about the fact that they were fudging their numbers about the pollution that the mines were causing. In this episode, they reveal that these guys actually wanted them to pollute Ennis even more. And, you know, there's a lot of things that we, over the course of these discussions, we were doing that fantasy booking and we were kind of trying to predict things. I would never have predicted that in a million years, that the scientists were like, yeah, pollute the town more. And so there's this whole agenda of, you know, the scientists, for the greater good, are willing to kill off a whole city of people. I mean, I know it's a little hamlet.
I think that's a fascinating discussion of like almost a Machiavellian discussion of like, what, at the end of the day, what is Ennis, Alaska?
Right.
And if we killed everyone there, or forced every one of those people to move because the water was black, would it be worth it to find this microbe that can be a potential future cure for diseases? And that's a very Machiavellian question. And there are, you know, greatest good for the greatest many, this and that. I and like the fact that Annie K was kind of like a stand-in for the town at that point, where it's like, yeah, like it's worth killing her to continue to do this research.
Yes. Chris has an amazing quote that I want to pop on here in a second, but I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what you were saying. I saw this quote today that said, history that isn't uncomfortable is just propaganda, right? And I was thinking about how so many people have had issues with movies in the past year, and they have issues with Isa Lopez. because of like her political views and like some of her quotes. This year we've had like Killers of the Flower Moon. We've had this. I think that her movie Tigers Are Not Afraid, they all kind of deal with this idea of like Indigenous people or people in a certain area not mattering. Like there's all these women and children
Oppenheimer talks about that too.
yeah, pretty much,
they
right?
Like effectively move native tribes off of the land that they used to build Los Alamos, right? Los Alamos.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, like, obviously that's something that Isa Lopez thinks a lot about. It's in her first main movie, and then this as well. And it's a topic that makes people uncomfortable because we do kind of overlook these groups. Like it's just not a part of our daily discussion, our daily Discord. I mean, I'm on fucking 2 YouTube channels where I talk about like Batman and stuff, or we talk about the next Scream sequel. But when we talk about these groups of people that live in these horrible, horrible conditions, and things can happen to them. In this show, their water is black. There's a crazy amount of stillborn births, And so to think that this company, Tsalal, actually wanted to make it worse just so that everyone could benefit eventually, it goes with that idea. Now, I have Any Case Killers as the ticker. I want to just make one point, then I want to do Chris's awesome quote. But basically, what I want to talk to you about is it seems like the show has one murder where it's a bunch of men killing one woman. Then it has another murder where it's the same bunch of men killed by a bunch of women. And that was something that Sherry and I talked about after we watched the episode. It's just the idea of like, did it have to be just women that killed these guys? Let's go into the details about the Annie's killers. Before we do that, though, look at this what Chris just dropped. Nick Pizzolatto is the Madam Web of showrunners. Thank you, Chris. I kind of wish Chris was here just talking with us right now, too. I could always send him the link if he wants to join. But so Danny, let's talk about that. Let's talk about Annie K's killers. What do you think of that scene when Annie K is murdered?
I mean, it's brutal. It wasn't something like premeditated as much as it was just reactionary. Yeah. But it's like one of those things that it's like once it starts, you can't like take it back, and you could tell that things were spiraling out of control. For them. One thing I'll say is you mentioned that it was a bunch of women killed a bunch of guys. I don't even know if we could say that they did. They pointed the guns at them. They forced them to take their clothes off, and they forced them to march out into the. But like that, you see them kind of disappear into the snow, but they're not like shot and killed, or so like. How are we defining murder, right? Like Annie K was murdered. She was stabbed repeatedly with this like tool and then suffocated to death.
Right.
Whereas they were just kind of like marched out onto the ice. It reminded me of the scene in Dark Knight Rises where where he's like, we could kill you or you could walk out onto the ice, and then like the guys just like fall in and that's it,
Yeah. No, it's with the scarecrow. Yeah, right, exactly. So hold on. My mom just walked in and I don't want to ruin the show for her. Shit, how do I talk about we're literally talking about the killers of the show.
Okay.
But anyway, she's leaving.
I just have to put some stuff in the refrigerator.
I was putting stuff in the refrigerator.
I'm sorry.
And no, it's okay. It's okay. Anyway, Danny.
It's okay. Hi, Grace.
Danny says hi, by the way.
Hello.
Yeah.
Talk to him about 6 instead.
Episode 6 is the last episode. Anyway, we're doing a live recording on YouTube right now.
I mean 6 with his daughter.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so
great.
as I was saying, the fuck, I'm trying to think of how I talk my way around this. So okay, what the fuck did you just say?
Just that one was a very clear murder. The other is kind of like forcing people into a position where they're going to die, but not actually murdering.
Okay,
them.
good. She left, and now I have something to say to that. Okay, so anyway, basically, the show, like, I like that nothing was like, oh, it's a monster. At one point, I got really, really scared when they were doing the flashback to the scene in the lab, and he's going down the hatch into the little underground area. I was like, oh shit, it is like, are they going to show what happens to the guys above? And is there going to be some kind of like swirling black kind of, House on Haunted Hill shit up there? I was really worried about that. And then when it was just like, no, it's just, women that work in the town, I actually preferred that. Now, the way that they executed that scene, there was something about that scene that bothered me a lot. Like they did this sort of like shrieking kind of noise. It was like a sort of like a native song that they were playing. And it just kind of seemed like a little over the top when the women confronted them. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on it too. But what I just really liked was there was no fucking supernatural monster. Now, Sherry and I kind of had this debate over, well, did the creature, the thing that's awakened, did that take them in the ice? And I was like, well, it's ambiguous, where you could just say they just ran away and froze to death. Whereas, other people could say, no, this like monster got them out there. What's your thought? Oh, look who's joining us. Look at this. Holy shit.
Oh man.
Hey!
Oh boy. What's up?
The tickers still work on the bottom too. That's awesome. Okay. Welcome to the show,
Very
Chris.
nice. What's up, guys? Look at you two handsome fucks.
Thank you. Future boy Chris, speaking of handsome, we were just talking about the killers of both the murders in the show.
Hold on, my bathroom is in view of the background. I know it's not Psycho. It's Psycho, right? We're allowed to show toilets now?
Yeah. Go nuts, man. Yeah. I don't know. With YouTube standards, though, I mean, maybe not. I don't know. It's getting a little weird. You can't curse on this shit anymore. So Chris, what did you think about the two answers for the two murders?
I love that this show. I love that the show rode the spiritual line, rode the supernatural line, and really, in the end, you think it's going to be a show that is, it's going to leave you guessing. But I think it's pretty clear when you finish it that this show wants you to think how you want to think about it. It gives practical answers and it gives supernatural answers, and it lets you live in both worlds. I thought that was very cool and totally on brand for Issa Lopez.
Right. Just like Tigers Are Not Afraid. Yeah.
I was just going to say the ending of this, it very similar in like Tigers Are Not Afraid obviously has overt supernatural things in it, but it also like wraps things up in a way where you're kind of answering questions where Pete and I, we were like, yeah, it could be that, it's just like that she died and now that's like the doorway is going to, there's ambiguities. But it's on brand for Issa Lopez, but I think it's also on brand for True Detective just based on like season 1, which also had a very human killer who you met early in the season. Yeah. Without realizing it. But then also has like some like fucking weird supernatural shit of like, who is the Yellow King? Who is the like Carcadia? What was the wasn't there like that?
Oh,
religion?
yeah.
I'll look it
Carcosa.
up. Carcosa, that's right.
And if I could just say something to the people who love this season and the people that are on Twitter or X or Weber or fighting, arguing against people like Nick Palazzo and like we won. You won. Like she's helming. Issa Lopez is helming season 5. This is the highest rated season, correct? Yes. And so clearly people hung in there. They loved what was being shown to them every week. Don't make your entire day arguing with assholes who essentially lost. Like they did so much time arguing with people about Prometheus and how physics work and how a hula hoop shaped object, you're going to want to run directly in front of it because
Right.
when it loses momentum, it's only going to fall to the left or right. When they were like, why didn't they just run to the left or right? I'm like, physics. What do you know? But
Right.
I'm like, this season is super successful. People are really enjoying the performances and where the story went. I'm like, if you're enjoying it, you're winning. Why waste your time arguing with these idiots?
That's a good piece of advice. I agree. It kind of reminds me of like the Chris Stuckman thing that you guys all shared, right? Where there just seems like in general people just dogpile, right? Oh, we don't like this. We're all going to dogpile on something, and then it just becomes this, black and white argument. And man, don't ever go on the fucking True Detective Reddit because that's the worst place for it. I get updates from it for some reason, and everyone's always like, "This is trash. This season makes no sense." Blah blah blah. I don't know. I saw a couple of issues that I had throughout the show, but in general, I really liked it. And the things that people would criticize, that wasn't the issue that I had with the show.
I think that and like you made a point earlier, Pete, about like the reasons why people are like attacking like whatever they're attacking, whether it's the Marvels or this, and it's like I feel you brought up like the Indigenous people and like Killers of the Flower Moon and other big films this year. And it's like we face this just as like as a history teacher where it's like you look at like the curriculum and it's like I've had this conversation with like coworkers of mine where I was like, man, I can't wait to like use Killers of the Flower Moon to like help teach about the Osage Indians in the 1920s because like there's a thing called the Dawes Act in 1880 something, and it's like after that in the 1880s it's like well that's it, Native Americans are on reservations, they're done for American history, and it's like well it's 2024 now.
Oh my God, it's 2024 now. Danny's off the reservation now.
Danny says the most insightful, most profound thing, and the internet's like, nope, get out of here.
Oh, he's back. Okay.
That's what we were saying, Danny, that's what you get for being insightful and profound. The internet's like, get that shit out of here.
Yes.
Wait, he's going to teach more about the Indigenous?
Yeah.
Nick Palazzo, are you in the chat?
Yeah. Censorship in real time. Holy shit.
So my before I ramble more, it's just like, this show had a lot of things for the haters to jump on. It was two female detectives in a show created by a woman. You had the Indigenous storyline. You had an environmental storyline. So these are all like hot button issues that like people don't have opinions about, but will make it so that they hate a show because of it.
Danny, that meme of Vince McMahon where it's like, it shows him getting excited in the chair and then his eyes eventually glow. All the haters are like, oh, two women? Oh, yeah. The woman show creator? Yeah, Indigenous? He's like, they're just like so fucking excited.
With the glowing eyes.
Yes. But let's bring it back to what happens in the episode itself. So Blair, right? As you said, that's another thing reference.
Yeah.
Last episode, you and I, Danny, we were like just speculating about how it could be her. And then, of course, there's the reveal on that hatch door. There's a 3-finger handprint, right?
So I will say, because when you brought this up to me last week, this could not have been further from my mind.
Right.
But I think Chris had mentioned, like, this is like totally what True Detective does, where they introduced us to the Yellow King in like episode 1, mowing a lawn.
Right.
And then like you come back to him 6.5 episodes later and he's the killer. And you're like, oh shit, I remember that guy. Like, that's going to really fuck up Matthew McConaughey.
Right.
And like, I completely like wrote off that like scene in The Butcher where you meet Blair and the other woman there. And I'm like, and so like when you brought that up last week, I was like, okay, if it's this, so what I was nervous about was like that this one woman with 8 fingers was going to have killed the Tsalal guys somehow herself. And I was like, is she like this super powered, like powered by a microbe under the sea? Like,
Right.
so I liked that the reveal was, yes, she was involved, but she was like a part of something bigger, and it wasn't like she just went and killed everybody.
Right. So were you guys satisfied with that? That like, because for me, seeing these women, and they did a little montage where like the one woman discovers the hatch, right? Then they do this thing where there's another woman that works at the police station and she finds all these files on Annie K. It kind of shows them sort of building a case against the Tsalal guys. I like that a lot, but there was something kind of over the top about when they came and got the guys. I told you that like sort of the musical choice sort of put me off a little bit. And then also Sherry and I were saying, why does it have to be all women? Like, aren't there men in the town that were suffering too because of Tsalal? Like, to me, that feels like, well, we have to make a statement that it's the women getting the revenge. It's the women that are the unseen ones. Whereas I think it'd be like more realistic if in that group that attacked, it could be mostly women, but that you had some men too. What did you guys think of that sequence?
I mean, here's the thing. I love Issa Lopez. Obviously, Tigers Are Not Afraid. But I've been following her since that film, and she's very outspoken, and she's an outspoken feminist, and that's fine. And I agree with a lot of the things she says majority of the time. But one thing she said to me once, and I mean, I think it's only a flaw depending upon where you fall on or if you're on one side, you're on the other, you're in the middle. But she said something years ago that always stuck with me, and it was in terms of far left ideology, like real, like just like just like ultra progressive. And she made a statement about how sometimes things that are super woke or far left or ultra progressive, it's an overcorrection is necessary to if you feel like things are too far on one side, an overcorrection to drag it back to a more balanced place is necessary. And I thought, wow, this is not someone I might completely agree about everything with, but I understand that ideology. I understand. I don't agree with it entirely, but I do understand it. So I could see how someone like her, a creative force like that, would just say, like, listen, this is, it's gonna be all women because we want to show how women band together. I guess it's almost a callback to the birthing scene.
Oh, okay, sure.
And I didn't think much of it, and I'm usually very cognizant of stuff like that. Right. So I think that's a testament to me being just totally engrossed in what was going on, that I really didn't think much of it being all women.
Yeah.
Interesting. I kind of agree with everything Chris just said, in the sense that, like, there wasn't a moment while I was watching that scene where I thought to myself, well, they wouldn't be able to do this. They also all had guns, which is very helpful when you want to scare anybody of any gender. Like, just have large guns. But I did kind of think back to a lot of things in the show, and there is a lot of gender segregation shown throughout this series. It's not like something that just showed up in this last episode. Like you mentioned, the birthing scene. But there's also that, like, when they go to where they find the rock, they go to like that indigenous place where, like, the law doesn't matter anymore, and that's like almost exclusively men. Like, aside from like the waitresses, it seemed like the bar was all men. So this is again, we're talking about Ennis, Alaska. There's a lot of indigenous people there, so there's probably a lot of like cultural segregation that exists. And so it didn't, and like I'm again, just to go back to like I rewatched like that first scene where you see Blair and the other woman being questioned, and it's like only women worked at that factory. So
Yeah.
it's like it didn't jump out as something strange to me that it was all women, especially since they're reacting to a woman's death who they know and who they were friends with and who was a member of their, you know, tribe. And it just, it kind of made sense. And it I didn't feel like you know, I always quote Chris's point about like how that when you start nitpicking things, it means you're not fully invested. And like, that wasn't something that I nitpicked.
You know, I kind of want to take that point, Danny, and kind of riff on it a little bit too, because like the main characters in this show, Navarro and Danvers, if we were watching this like 10 years ago, or certainly earlier than that, they would be two male characters and they could have the exact same personalities as male characters. And I think that everyone will just be like, yeah, that's the way that these male cops are on a show like this, you know, because you have Danvers who just basically like has sex with everyone, right? And so she's kind of like that guy, that male character that like sleeps around, and then she's a badass. She's always saying, ask the right questions, you know, and then she's drinking a lot. She has all these issues. Navarro has this kind of tortured past, and she like has no problem getting physical with the men that she takes on. She has that one guy who she has her like, you know, booty calls with, and, you know, they kind of fit these male detective character archetypes. And then the way that the show ends, it's not with them. Yeah, there is violence against Clark, and they do find him in the lab and sort of torture him a little bit. But ultimately, the way the episode ends, the whole story ends, is with them kind of coming to terms with each other, with their past, with their trauma. It's like just two women having to be together and like literally keep each other warm. You know, it's interesting because the way the story ends, it's not this big violent thing where there's a shootout and they have to find the killer and shoot them or something like that. It's just them kind of dealing with the aftermath and dealing with their own personal trauma. So I think that's a really interesting thing where you're talking about the gender roles, and it's almost like that's the way that women resolve it in this situation. That's interesting.
It's also kind of funny how like if you just, you know, you said like if you go back 10 years, there'd probably be two male leads. Well, if you go back 10 years of True Detective to 2014,
there you go.
You basically have like the cop who likes to fuck everybody. That was Woody Harrelson.
Right.
And you have like the badass, like with the dark past who like comes up with like weird philosophies on life. That's Navarro, that was Matthew McConaughey.
Right.
So, and that season ends with the two of them like in the hospital, and then like you know, keeping each other warm, so to speak, as they like leave the hospital. Like what's his name? Matthew McConaughey's got like a knife deep in his like chest, and he's got to be like cradled by Woody Harrelson in the last episode.
Yeah.
So like again, like all jokes about the original creator aside, I do think that there were a lot of subtle connections aside from the spiral and some of the quotes. I do think there was a lot that connected this back to season one in just the tone of the leads and their relationship and everything else.
Well, that brings up a great point. And Chris, I kind of wanted to ask you this one. Do you think that this, without the True Detective label, if it was just called Night Country, do you think that this would have almost as many viewers and as much of a buzz about it? Because, I mean, think of like Mayor of Easttown. That's not any kind of franchise. That was a big hit for HBO. Once again, female lead, right? Kate Winslet. You know, because I was thinking about that one quote. You said quotes, Danny. There's that part where Clark says time is a flat circle. And that kind of also rubbed me the wrong way too, because I was like, oh, that kind of feels like a Marvel movie or like a comic book movie, sort of like, let's reference this thing. It didn't like feel like it like landed right. What did you think about the connections, Chris? And could the show have stood on its own without those connections?
I think that normally I would say that it would have needed the True Detective banner to get the numbers it got and get the attention that it got. But You know, it's not TV, it's HBO.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's a reason why people, HBO, Max, those labels are synonymous with quality. So many, arguably, there is not another channel, another service that produces more original quality content. So I think if it was just called Night Country and you had Jodie Foster in there, clearly in like an investigative role, which is so reminiscent of one of her most famous roles, that would have been enough to draw people in for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead,
when
Danny.
when you said like it's like a Marvel movie, like taking the quote, you mean like if we are responsible, we will have full power?
Yeah, Madam Web. Go check out mine and Danny's review with Brian on Comic Books Transform for Madam Web. That's a good example of, okay, it doesn't matter if it's man or woman, whoever's involved, that's just a train wreck in itself.
Listen, I haven't seen Madam Web, but I'm going to make an assumption that this was made purely just to keep the rights, right?
It feels like it. Yeah.
I would have to imagine that's, yeah.
Yeah. It's a crime, though. You'll see. But
will I though?
Oh yeah, you probably won't. Right? Yeah. Just don't bother, man. Don't bother. So with this being said, we were talking about the supernatural versus the logical answers. Annie K's tongue was in that lab.
I was waiting for. I'm like, bring up the tongue. Like, if you haven't already, we got to talk about this.
Yes, that's what I usually say on my dates. Bring up the tongue. So why was her tongue at the lab? Who put the tongue at the lab? You guys want to give me your answers? Your fantasy booking?
I'm not gonna pretend that I have these ideas, because immediately after I was looking up, you want to know what people are thinking, you want to know what the buzz and the vibe is, and I think immediately after the episode aired, Variety put out an article with Issa Lopez, and she basically just said, I like the tongue is completely open to interpretation, but I wanted it to be open to interpretation in the world of practicality and logic, and open to interpretation in the world of supernatural and spirituality. And she had mentioned that if you lean more on the supernatural end, that Annie K left her own tongue there.
That's kind of what I was on. My thought was they didn't go supernatural with what killed the Tsalal guys. They didn't go supernatural with what killed Annie K. I still come back to Clark, like having like a fucking seizure and then stopping and going, she's awake. And to me, that was like some kind of supernatural force of Annie K kind of summoning the other women, like because now that in the scope of the story, those other women are like outside about to break in and like grab everybody, and Clark like makes a beeline for the hatch. So that for me felt like it was Annie K haunting him specifically as like her former love interest who he betrayed, and her leaving her own tongue there as like a symbol of like, that it's because of her that this is about to happen. And then like the women bust in and guns blazing and grab the men they can and take them to the ice shelf where they're gonna freeze to death.
Well, yeah. What did you guys think about the comment that I don't know her name, Blair's friend, when she asked about the tongue, she says, "That's not our story."
Yeah, I feel like that at least alludes to that they don't know how that got there. I'm going to offer up a third alternative to what you guys said for the tongue, and I'm going to offer the like logical, non kind of supernatural answer that I was thinking, which is that Hank is one of the first people on the scene when they go to the station, right? And I was thinking that like he hears that there's something out the Tsalal station, these guys are missing, he thinks something happened to them. I think that the way the show ends, they try to portray Hank as a guy that has remorse over his actions and what he's done. And I think that Hank literally left the tongue there so that they could pick it up and connect it to the Annie K murders. You know, mine probably ironically sounds the most far-fetched out of all the ones that we just said.
I don't think so at all. I think honestly, I think it's the most practical answer.
Yeah. But
I like that he suggests that a human being took a physical object and put it in a physical location, and he's like, "That's the most unrealistic idea."
Right. But
it was the ghost of the woman who left her own tongue. And Pete's like, "Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, Danny."
I'll just repeat myself.
Oh
I'm just
God.
glad that we didn't have some kind of house on haunted hill. The girl Blair in a floating black cloud, and she places the tongue on the ground. I'm just glad we did not have that.
It's so specific.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Jeffrey Rush just floats out and drops the tongue and floats back in. Yeah.
Chris Kattan's ghost lifting the shade.
Chris Kattan.
perfect. So
Oh man.
So I love that fucking movie too. But let's kind of wrap it all up, and I wanted to ask you guys the other main question, which is that Navarro or Navarro's ghost at the end?
I feel like I don't know if it's really a ghost. I feel like it's this Navarro a couple times goes to almost like this world in between worlds.
Mm-hmm.
When she touches hands and I feel like if you're gonna ask me off the top of my head, I feel like that's where she is. I feel like she's almost in like the further,
Oh, okay. The
or
further
like the
is
upside down.
right. The furthest from Insidious, right?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Right. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool. I like that answer. Yeah.
I kind of felt like she needed to walk out like almost like her sister did to like cleanse herself. Oh, there's the cat. And
She just came out of the closet. I mean, not like that, but she was sleeping in the closet. She was.
Yes.
but I don't know. It also could be that Jodie Foster, because Jodie Foster is also, she's had dreams of her lost son,
Right.
who passed away, and she's had dreams of like I guess her ex-husband, and so it could just be like a way for them to kind of be together, like have closure together while not being together, if that makes any sense.
Side note, because I have to bring this up, and you guys know me, and I fixate on moments like this. Can we just acknowledge how much of a fucking juggernaut Jodie Foster is?
Oh yeah.
I'm not just gonna act. I'm not just gonna grieve. I'm gonna grieve through hypothermia.
Yeah.
And you're gonna believe it. Like, I'm sitting there going like, holy shit, I believe that she's grieving right now. Like, really, for the first time, grieving the loss of her son through just being on the verge of death.
Yeah.
Like, just an absolute powerhouse.
Totally agree. The thing is, right, because she's such a big actor, and because Navarro and Danvers are such big stars, it overshadows the talent that's been on this show. Like, I think the guy that plays Peter is really, really good. And then I am such a big fucking fan of Fiona Shaw. And I thought she was really good in this episode too, right?
Dude, she's got a monologue in Andor that is for the ages. I mean, everyone's got a monologue in Andor that is for the ages.
Right. And so, yeah, I know what you're saying about Jodie Foster, though. I mean, that's the beauty of this show, is that there are these moments for everyone to shine. And you're absolutely right. That moment when her and Navarro are together in the lab and they're sitting by the fire. I mean, like, even her face looks like skeletal after she's been in the fucking water, too.
Yeah.
I mean, they really were lucky to have her on this show and like just to be the fucking lead. And then I think Navarro even too, like, considering that Danny said in the beginning of this episode, she's a fucking fighter, a boxer, right? And I think
I had no idea until a couple days ago.
And you know what? She wasn't the first couple episodes. I'm looking at Denise for watching it. I'm like, I don't know. I'm I'm
Oh,
not
really?
feeling it. I'm not feeling it. And then gradually, I'm like, yep, this is the right choice. This is what this character's supposed to be. It worked. It worked in the end.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I was worried about the show just because it was such a talked about thing and because there was such a buzz on Reddit and YouTube and Twitter and stuff. And I think ultimately I'm like satisfied with the ending. So, Chris, I was going to ask you: have you watched True Detective seasons 2 or 3?
Oh no, I've seen them all.
Okay, so do season 2 and 3 have any kind of supernatural aspects to them or no?
No. Two is very two, which is listen, I'll be honest, I don't think any of them are bad, but I'm gonna say two is definitely the weakest with a
Yeah,
great cast. Vince Vaughn, Colin
yeah.
Farrell, Rachel McAdams. But two, I'd say 2 and 3 are definitely they lean harder on I'm not sure if there's a supernatural element in either of those. I don't think there is. Two leans more into a oh my god, this cat's right. Um, hi, how are you? I know.
Very nice.
So I know. Two leans more into a like more of like a mafia aspect, and three, if you just want like a great, almost like a Mindhunter, like a good legit true crime like season, that's three with Mahershala Ali and a performance from Stephen Dorff that I honestly not only did not think he was capable of at that stage in his career, but maybe ever. Like it's probably one of the best things he's ever done.
Damn, man. Okay, okay. I
That
didn't even know
season, I think season 3 is really good.
Yeah, I didn't even know Stephen Dorff was in that fucking seasons. That's awesome. I actually like him a lot.
Yeah,
Fucking Blade.
Judgment Night.
Yeah, there you go. That too. Of course. Yeah, yeah. But it's funny because I'm actually not that interested in going into 2 and 3. I was watching 2 a little while ago just to kind of fill in the gap, and now after Nick Pizzolatto's responses, I'm kind of turned off, honestly.
Yeah.
But Danny, what do you think overall? Like, because you really loved that first season. Side by side, what do you think about these two shows?
I think they're very different while being weirdly similar. I think season 1 for me was just fantastic. I really liked some of like the Lovecraftian stuff. There was like the whole it really just hit on everything that I kind of love. It like hinted at like Lovecraftian mythos. There was like a cult, there was a conspiracy. It's like you put all those things together and it's like making like the perfect show. Like I watched all 8 episodes of season 1 in 2 days.
Yeah.
And fucking loved every minute of it. This season I had to watch week to week, and like I would have like when this episode ended, I was like, Pete, can you record at 11 o'clock at night New York time Sunday?
Yeah.
And Pete was like, Thursday? I was like, oh, damn it. So like I felt the only difference is that when each episode ended, I was like really excited to talk about each of these episodes.
Right.
But I also I don't feel like a few days go by, I watch a few movies, I go to the movie theater, I see David Lynch's Dune for the first time, and I like little like I don't want to say I start to forget things, but like I'm like remembering as I'm talking sometimes about the show, whereas like season 1 also, again, because I watched it in such a short period of time, I feel like I liked it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
could you imagine if
as far as the mystery, the supernatural / horror twists that we got in this season, the acting, Issa Lopez, this was like if season 1 was a 10 out of 10, this was like a good 9.
Okay. That's really well put. I see. Yeah. Could you imagine if that first season was like made in a foreign country and it had sharks in it? Like Danny would just be ejaculating spirals like every episode, But
I actually watched a new shark movie this week, No Way Up. about the plane that crashes. It's like sharks in a plane.
Is that on Tubi?
I rented it on VOD.
Wow.
And by the way, I love that Tubi's giving like everyone a run for their money with original content.
So I'm such a fucking nerd that not only do I tally up every movie that I watch during the year, but I also I started for this year especially tallying where I watched the movie. So right now through February 20 whatever today is, the 21st or 2nd, Tubi is right now, it's movie theater is number 1 and Tubi is number 2. Like I've watched more movies on Tubi than any of the streaming services that I pay for, and I've watched more movies on Tubi.
That's a fucking plug right there. Take that.
They are, yeah. Tubi's. I mean, really, I don't know how they do it. Like, they're just littered with. It's just they have like great genre. They have like every genre documentary you love. Like all the horror documentaries. There's a great Lovecraft documentary from a few years ago that's on there. It just absolutely insane.
And the amount of like B movie gold, not even B movie, like C and B movie gold. Like, they had like all the full moon movies, tons of like low budget 80s movies that like you might remember a VHS box for, but like have not seen in 25 years.
Like, I don't need an excuse to put on Tourist Trap, and it's always on there. So I watch it probably once a month. You know?
Yeah. Well, you know, once we get to a point where we're shelling for Tubi, that's wrong, right? Considering that we usually shell for Shudder on this Mike Flanagan themed podcast that we have.
Okay.
But anyway, it has been a fucking blast. Chris, I love when you come on the show because you bring this great energy to it. Guys, if you haven't checked out Chris's channel,
I love his black cat shirt.
Oh, yeah. I love that Pete's like, because Pete's really like, oh my God, this clown has got a couple in him. He keeps commenting. We're just going to have him on, or else he's going to keep bothering us.
Just get in here. Just get in here.
Yeah,
with us.
it's like Applebee's all over again. Put a few winter lagers in him, and he's just intolerable.
Oh man, give me some fucking mozzarella sticks. We're good to go. But Danny, I'm going to do the plug real quick so that we can get on to our next review too. Chris, stick around because I want to ask you about that too. But yeah, we got Deep Red coming up right after this review. We're doing the 1975 Argento film. And then besides that, Danny's got some shorts up on the channel. We also have a movie that we got a screener for that I just started watching, really digging. I'm not going to reveal it yet because I'm not unsure if we're allowed to. But guys, thank you so much for our Night Country views. And please let us know what you thought of the finale. Danny, you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Like you said, I have some shorts on my body, and
I was gonna say in that closet over there. Yeah.
I got Screambox put out this freaking hilariously ridiculous splatter movie called Here for Blood, and it's a lot of fun, and it's got some amazing practical gore effects, so that's worth checking out if you have like 100 spare minutes. Lisa Frankenstein, I have a short for that up. Also, well worth going to check that out. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah. So as you can see, guys, Danny's always putting out videos. So make sure you subscribe to the Lastercast, and we will see you guys real soon.